Hey, this is Rue. Today I'm doing another EU4 challenge run, this time starting as Ardabil. This is a really fun nation that starts in a tough spot but has a lot of room for potential expansion. To make this run more interesting, we're going to set a couple house rules. First, we're not allowed to have any allies at any time. Second, we can only use special Qizilbash troops. Qizilbash are slightly better and cheaper than normal troops, but they have a low unit cap that's going to make this an interesting challenge. Since there's no option to build Qizilbash artillery, we are allowed to build normal artillery regiments once we unlock them. Let's get into it. Our estate setup's going to be a little different for this one. I grabbed the admin and mill mana privileges, but instead of getting Diplo mana, we established the Qizilbash regiments as well as the protected communities privilege. The rest of the estates are pretty standard, but we do grab a few less common ones for this run. Expand the fortifications, expansionist zealotry, and religious culture. We're going to be staying Shia, and since that's a minority religion, we should be able to get a lot of use out of expansionist zealotry. With the estates taken care of, we start queuing up our Qizilbash units and deleting our normal ones. We set our initial rivals as Shirvan and Biapas, and we end our alliance with Galan. In May, we're able to complete our first mission, establish the Qizilbash. This gives us 20 army tradition, which is actually pretty impactful this early in the game. We use the Seize Clerical Holdings ability to complete our next mission, Effective Governance. This one gives us 1 extra base tax and gives us 5% crown land from the Ulama. We start with Loan of Piety to immediately complete the third mission in this chain, which gives us a Holy War CB for 25 years, which we'll definitely make use of. By December, we've trained 9 regiments of Qizilbash infantry, which is enough to reach the overall force limit and complete another mission, Army of the Realm. This gives us permaclaims to the Azerbaijan and Shirvan regions, as well as a small morale boost. The Timurid ruler dies really early this run, April of 1446, so a Timurid vassal independence war is almost guaranteed. We go over our regular limit to hit the Qizilbash cap at 10 infantry regiments, and we don't waste any time putting them to use, declaring on Biapas in May of 1446. Biapas made the mistake of allying a Niza, who start the game with a Mamluk corps and usually get attacked within a few months of the game start. Gaz is the only ally willing to honor, and we should be able to take out Biapas before they can come down to help. Biapas has 4,000 soldiers, but they're not in their home provinces. Currently, Mamluk troops are sieging both Biapas provinces, and we join the fun. Mid-siege, we go to expand the Qizilbash regiments because we're going to need all the Qizilbash we can get. The Mamluks make peace with Biapas in September, taking gold and war reparations. This frees up both provinces for us to occupy. We get a pretty good heir in October, a 3-4-6. We finished the siege of the capital in January, but Gaz has come down with 8,000 troops and blocked us in by sitting on the mountain province of Astara. Ajami won't give us mill access, so this is a little bit awkward. Neither side wants to attack into a -2 mountain terrain penalty. Eventually we have to take the chance, and our troops move to break through in April of 1447. Even with the -2 penalty, our morale is way higher, 3.5 versus 2.7, and we win fairly easily. We move northward and start sieging Gaz territory. We finish the siege in December and separate peace Gaz, taking gold and war reparations. Immediately afterwards, we full annex Biapas. With the new privilege and a bit more land, we're able to train another 3,000 Qizilbash infantry. Ajami gets involved in a Timurid independence war, so knowing that one flank is temporarily secured, we go after our next target, QQ, in January of 1450. Note that Ardabil can pull off kind of a cool trick here. We can use the Holy War CB on Qarabakh, QQ's vassal, and since Qarabakh is Coptic Christian, all of QQ's Muslim allies will automatically dishonor. This is one of my favorite parts of the Holy War CB. You can use it to break apart allies of different religions, and we'll do the same thing again later in the game. In any event, QQ's having rebel issues, and a 1v1 is about as good as we're going to get. We start the war by marching into Tabriz, but we see the QQ army heading for our capital, so we head back to get the defensive mountain bonus on our side. This is an easy route, and a pretty boneheaded decision by the AI. In June, the Mamluks pile on, declaring a reconquest war against QQ. This is both good and bad. Good in that the war is basically won and QQ's game is over, but bad in that the Mamluks might mess up our occupations or take territory we want. In October, we get the notification that Castile has declined the Iberian wedding, which doesn't really matter for us now, but is going to have some interesting consequences later. By May, we're ready for the peace deal, and we take a huge chunk of land, the rest of our capital area of Azerbaijan, 4 provinces in Armenia, and 1 additional border province to the south. Ardabil gets a mission to conquer Tabriz, which is actually really good, a free core and -2 war exhaustion. The Mamluks make peace with QQ in June, and they take almost nothing, 1 core return to their vassal and some gold. Once we've cored everything in Azerbaijan, we can complete the mission Protect Ardabil. This gives +1 tax, production, and manpower for every owned province in the Azerbaijan area. Since we have all 5 provinces, this gives a total of 15 dev, which is significant this early in the game. We also established the Safaviya Holy Order in the state, which gives 2 manpower for each province. Between the mission and the Holy Order, we just improved the total development in Azerbaijan from 46 to 71. Ajam goes after QQ in the summer of 1457, which gives us the green light to declare on Georgia in June. Georgia's only ally is Theodoro, and between them they have 4,000 fewer troops than we do, so this shouldn't be too difficult. We take the Georgian fort in Kartli in October of 1458 and attack the 7,000 strong Georgian army in Imereti. We're attacking into mountains again, but we have a numbers and quality advantage and we win decisively. We pursue the Georgian forces into Abkhazia, where we stack wipe them. While we're sieging the Georgian capital, in January QQ makes peace with Ajam. As part of the peace deal, QQ's forced to release several minor nations, including Armenia. We don't waste any time declaring on Armenia before they can pick up any allies. We make a peace deal with Georgia in August, taking 4 provinces but not demanding full annexation. At this stage of the game, and particularly in this region, I only want provinces we can defend, and the fort in Kars is going to be key. In May, we get the notification that Crimea did not take the Ottoman subject option, so they'll remain independent. While we've been sieging Armenia, Samska declared on them as well and has started taking our occupations. That's obviously not going to fly, and we declare our 3rd back-to-back Holy War. We immediately push in and take out what's left after both our enemies finish fighting each other. By February, our available manpower is down to 0. Fortunately, Muslim nations, and Ardabil in particular, have several ways of getting out of a bad manpower situation. First, we get a lucky event that gives us a small chunk of manpower. Next, we activate the Muslim mysticism ability, calling on religious followers, which gives us another 6,000 manpower. There's one more ability that I'll show once these wars wrap up. The Holy War against Samska concludes in May of 1461 with us demanding their only province. The Armenian War ends a month later, with us again demanding full annexation. We immediately remove the redundant fort in Kartli. We get a special event following the conquest of Armenia, which gives us the choice of stability and lower culture conversion cost, or some manpower recovery speed and more base tax in our capital area. I'm not planning on culture converting Armenia, so we take the manpower and development. In December, we expand the Safavid order to the state of Armenia, which completes our Qizilbash estate mission. This is the last manpower trick I wanted to show, but it's a doozy. Currently, we gain 286 manpower a month, so getting 14,000 at once is really strong. In March, we start building a fort in the southern border province of Suleimania. The Persian and Caucasian regions have a lot of mountains, so building a perimeter of border forts can be a decent strategy. We've expanded enough to increase our Qizilbash force limit, so we train an additional 2 regiments in October to reach a total army size of 18,000. There's another trick we can use here to exceed the Qizilbash force limit. We grant the Qizilbash estate privilege Grant Horses Rights, which gives us a decision that creates 4 Qizilbash cavalry regardless of force limit. This makes us a little bit cav heavy, but we'll catch up on infantry later. Our truce with QQ finishes in the summer of 1467, and that means we're back for round 2. QQ has no allies and half the nation's under rebel occupation, so this is basically free real estate, and I'll skip to the peace deal. We take 2 Kurdish provinces next to our newly constructed fort, as well as the old Georgian capital of Tbilisi in the north. The rest of the war score goes to humiliating QQ and taking gold. You can make a case for taking Iraqi land here, but I wanted to humiliate somebody for the age objective before we expand too much. It's often easier to humiliate enemies in the early game when your rivals are minor nations rather than later. We make our next move in December of 1471. Ajam is fighting against Khorasan, and 2 of their allies are going to dishonor the call to arms. We co-belligerent Shirvan here. Their only extra ally is the Ottomans, and they're also going to dishonor. On paper, this is a 1v3, but due to the geography and the fact that Ajami forces are already in another war, I think we can fight this as a series of 3 1v1s. We go for Shirvan first, and their forces immediately pull back. A small AQ force sieges our fort in Suleimania, but we capture the Shirvani capital in June. After taking the capital, both our stacks attack the Shirvani army in the drylands of Dagestan. Once again, we have both a numbers and quality advantage, and the Shirvani force is totally destroyed. We separate peace Shirvan in October, demanding their full annexation. This lets us complete the Conquer Shirvan mission, giving us 100 admin and 1 stability. We've also met the requirements for a second mission, giving us a mosque and castle in our capital. Ardabil is a really good province for a castle, so we remove the forts in Tabriz and Shirvan. We go for AQ next, and they put up 0 resistance. Still no sign of Ajami forces. We siege down the AQ capital, as well as some other provinces, and reach a peace deal in July of 1474. We pillage their capital, humiliate them, require they end their alliance with the Ottomans, and pay us some gold. So far, this war's gone better than we could have hoped. Now we're just in a 1v1 with Ajam, who's somehow still tied up in that war against Khorasan. I think there must be some sort of access issue that's preventing that war from ending. Ajam finally makes peace with Khorasan in June of 1476, taking a few provinces, but at this point it's too late. Our total army sizes are almost exactly the same, 22,000, but we focused on being ahead in Miltech, and Ajami forces are afraid to fight us head on. We take the key fort in Qazvin, and then march west to relieve the siege of Sulaymaniyah. The battle starts in January with almost exactly the same numbers on both sides. Ajam has a slight discipline advantage, but we have a much larger morale advantage, as well as the defensive highlands bonus. We win easily and push south into Ajami territory. That single battle against Ajam would end up being the last one of the war. We capture their capital and settle on a peace deal in November of 1477. We get our 2 corps back, as well as 10 additional provinces in the heart of Persia. This deal is a little border gory, but part of this is trying to block out Transoxiana, and I want the province of Ardabil for another defensive border fort. This war was a complete triumph for us. We took on 3 nations and ended up annexing one completely, humiliating another, and gutting the third. We now have enough development to upgrade our government to kingdom rank, which is a nice bonus. We have enough Persian provinces to complete the mission into Persia, which gives you the option of a really good heir, some mana and a discounted advisor, or an amazing general. You can make a good case for the general, and I've done that before, but I think overall it's hard to beat a 5/6/5 heir, so that's what we choose. We'd been able to get knowledge sharing from Genoa, so by January of 1482 we're ready to embrace the Renaissance. Doing so lets us grab some cheaper techs and unlocks artillery, which we'll start by training 5 regiments of. We're way behind in admin due to us focusing military early and all the coring we've done. Once unpaused, we get the notification that Ardabil has become one of the world's great powers with 387 total development. In August of 1483 we choose offensive as our first idea group. The main reason I'm picking this is to get the extra 20% special unit force limit, although the rest of offensive ideas are pretty good too. If this was a normal run, I probably would have picked defensive here. Just a few months later we go after Iraq. Ajam had been forced to release Iraq as part of their peace deal with Transoxiana, and Iraq hasn't been able to get any allies, so this is about as easy as it gets. During the war we get an event giving us a corps in Mosul, and our truce is up with QQ, so they'll be our next target. We capture the Iraqi capital in May of 1484 and demand their annexation. Following the peace deal, we declare our third and final war on QQ. We set Hais and Kaifa as a co-belligerent since they don't have any other allies and we want that land. One of my goals for this playthrough is to unite the entire Persian culture group, and that includes the Kurdish land in northern Iraq and eastern Anatolia. We fully occupy both nations by summer of 1485 and annex both. We know we've officially made it in January of 1488 when we get simultaneously rivaled by both the Ottomans and the Mamluks. We go after our next target in 1489, declaring on Fars. Fars is allied to Transoxiana, but we're stronger than both, so this shouldn't be too hard. We siege down most of Fars and head back to relieve the siege of Qazvin. This fort's in a really good position, but the one drawback is that this is a drylands province, so there's no defensive bonus. Still, with a morale and miltech advantage we don't need it and we win the battle easily. The next battle comes deep in Transoxiana territory, at the fort of Merv, and results in another clear victory. We take a peace deal shortly afterwards, taking 3 provinces and creating a corridor to the Persian Gulf. If you're wondering why we didn't take more here, I didn't want to go too crazy with aggressive expansion considering we're going to pick up a bunch more when we go back into Ajam. We declare our second war against Ajam in December of 1492. They have 2 allies, but neither is very strong. We take the Ajami capital and march west to relieve the siege of Haditha in western Iraq. With the numbers and quality advantage, this is another easy victory, and we're able to pursue Ajami forces to the southeast where we rout both armies in Hoveja and Avaz. We can't get access to Hormuz, but while we're waiting on war score to tick up, we get a funny notification in April of 1498. Ming has set us as a rival. I'm not sure why AI nations do this when we're half a world away, but whatever. In January, we're able to complete our 3rd age objective and kick off our golden era. The reduced idea costs are going to be really useful since we're about to unlock our 2nd idea group. We make peace with Ajam shortly afterwards, taking all of their provinces except one. It's always unfortunate when you run out of war score, but we'll just have to get that last province later. The Ajami War has given us enough provinces in the Persia region to complete the second to last Ardabili mission, Rise of the Safavids. This gives us some really strong modifiers until the death of our current ruler. Since our current ruler's 52 and we have a really good heir waiting, we have Abbas abdicate and let Ismail take the throne before completing the mission. In November of 1502, we unlock our 2nd idea group, Trade Ideas. Trade ideas are great for countries in this region and will really help with our economy. Right now we have a lot of land, but we haven't built many buildings, and most of our income is going to army upkeep and advisors. Fars is our next target, and we declare our 2nd war in November of 1502. Fars has 4 allies, but most of these are minor players. Mid-war I do a check of army quality, and we have the second highest morale in the world behind only France, and that's with France running a morale advisor compared to our discipline advisor. Just like the first Farsi War, the first battle is in defense of our castle in Qazvin. This time we're outnumbered by 7,000 men, but our quality advantage is massive and we win with a decisive 7-to-1 casualty ratio. The second engagement of the war is another fort defense, this time in the swamplands of Hoveja in December of 1505. This battle is even more one-sided, with enemy forces being completely destroyed. We make peace with Fars in October of 1506, taking Basra and 6 provinces in southern Persia. Note this is not a full annexation, Fars still has several provinces east of Hormuz on the Gulf of Oman. While we were fighting our war, the Ottomans and Mamluks were going at it again. AQ had been allied to both, but they would have been better off sticking with just the Ottomans. The Ottomans separate peace AQ in April of 1507, taking 4 of their provinces. What an ally. This gives us our first direct land border with the Ottomans, but if you look carefully in the corner you can see that Venice actually has control of Constantinople. The Ottomans still not having Constantinople in 1507 with no player involvement is pretty unusual. We wait until the Mamluks are going to dishonor, then we declare our own war against AQ in December of 1508. This is non-competitive, so I'll skip to the peace deal. We take 3 provinces around our border fort in Hais and Kaifa. The Ottomans could declare on us at any time, so right now I only want to take provinces we can defend immediately. We also pillage the AQ capital and demand they convert to Shia. The Ottomans declare war on Crimea in 1512, but something about this war isn't adding up. The Ottomans and Muscovy in a war together on the same side? I go to check the Ottoman Diplo and it's even more bizarre. They're allied to both Muscovy and Aragon. I don't know that I've ever seen that particular combo before. In 1514, our truce ends with Ajam, and that means we're back to war. This is a smooth war with one exception. Fars takes an occupation we wanted, the island of Hormuz. The first battle of note takes place in the deserts of eastern Arabia in May of 1515, and we win easily. The next year we catch a Hormuzi army in Basra and they get stack wiped. I try to stall the war to see if we can get Hormuz, but eventually I give up and separate peace them, taking Moghastan and demanding they end their alliance with the Ottomans. We then finish the war with Ajam, demanding their full annexation. We declare on Sistan next in March of 1519. This is another quick war, and we're not looking to take much. We make peace in January of 1521, taking 3 provinces from Sistan and 1 from Fars. We're able to complete the Trade Idea Group in February of 1523, which lets us enact the Public Road Act, increasing trade efficiency and movement speed. The Trade Idea Group has some really good policies attached to it, and it's one of my favorite diplomatic idea groups. We unlock our 3rd idea group in May, and I choose religious ideas. If my goal with this run was maximum expansion, admin ideas are probably the way to go here, but this playthrough is more about roleplay and religious ideas are perfect for that. Transoxiana is our next target, and we declare in October of 1524. This is our first enemy in a while with significant allies, the Mamluks, Ming, and so on, but I'm not overly concerned. The Mamluks have lost at least 2 wars to the Ottomans, so they aren't exactly a powerhouse, and the Ming are across the continent with outdated troops and a low mandate. The first battle of the war is again at the fort in Qazvin, where we trap and stack wipe a force of 12,000 Transoxianian soldiers. There are a couple of smaller battles, but for the most part enemy forces don't want to engage us, which is probably smart, and we're able to siege down most of Transoxiana. We reach a peace deal in July of 1529, taking 12 provinces and pillaging their capital. Once we core our new land, we can form Persia, but before we do that there's one more Ardabil mission I want to complete, which requires that we own every province in the Persia region. The only province we're missing is the island of Hormuz, so our next target is obvious, and we declare war shortly after making peace with Transoxiana. We've built up a decent fleet of 24 galleys, so we're able to get naval supremacy in the Straits of Hormuz. Everything's on track for an easy victory, and Persia, with its powerful ideas and mission tree, is right on the horizon. Then we get the notification. The Ottomans are getting ready to declare war on us. This is one of those moments that's pure RNG but feels almost cinematic. The Ottomans are going to try to stop us before we get even more powerful. I don't blame them for trying, but we'll have to see how it goes. We build an additional 3 regiments of Qizilbash to reach our unit cap. We have 37 regiments of Qizilbash backed by 10 regiments of artillery. We naval barrage Hormuz and rush our new regiments over to merge with our 2 existing armies. Strangely enough, the Ottomans don't outright declare war, but rather threaten war over the province of Hais and Kaifa. Hais and Kaifa isn't required to form Persia, so the min-max play is almost certainly to accept this demand, form Persia, and come back for the Ottomans later. But this is a roleplay playthrough, and there's no chance we're just going to hand a province over. So it's war, but first we're going to have to wrap up the Hormuzi conflict. We get a little bit lucky and get Hormuz on a 7% tick, and we only need to push slightly further before they're ready for peace. All we're taking in this deal is the province of Hormuz, which lets us complete the final Ardabil mission, Consolidate Persia, giving us a bunch of mana, power projection, and an autonomy reduction modifier for 25 years. Fortunately for us, it takes some time for the Ottomans to get their armies into position, and they don't start sieging our border force until several months into the war. The Ottoman war goal is Hasan-Kaifa, and this is the site of the first battle in July of 1530. Our entire army of 47,000 soldiers against 60,000 Ottomans, and the quality is actually pretty close. Equal discipline, tactics, and military tech. We do have a small morale advantage as well as a defensive highland bonus. Note the 2nd Ottoman army marching around to the north. If the AI were to concentrate their forces here, we probably couldn't stop them, but the AI loves to split up their armies. We roll pretty badly, 0, 0, 7, 2, 1, but the Ottoman army retreats anyways. This is a little close for comfort, so it's time to reinstate horses' rights to the Qizilbash. This gives us another 4 Qizilbash cavalry regiments on our capital, which we merge into our 2 armies. Our total army strength is now 29 Qizilbash infantry regiments, 12 Qizilbash cavalry regiments, and 10 cannon regiments. The Ottomans resumed the siege at Hasan-Kaifa, but this time with only 38,000 soldiers. The Second Battle of Hasan-Kaifa begins on November 1st, but this time the Ottomans are outnumbered across the board. We score a decisive win, but I see a concerning notification pop up. The Ottomans have called Russia to this war. The Ottomans start sieging another border fort, this time in Kars. The numbers are even again, but this is a mountain province, so we get a better defensive bonus and our 3rd straight victory. It's time for another army expansion, but since we can't train any more Qizilbash, cannons will have to do. Cannons aren't very effective at this stage of the game, but they're certainly better than nothing, so we train another 10 artillery regiments and split our forces into 3 groups. We check the war status in mid-November. We have a combined force of 61,000 men, while the Ottomans and Russians have 173,000. The next few months see our enemies maneuvering their forces around, but in June we fight a second battle in defense of the mountain fort at Kars. Of our 3 western border forts, this one has the worst terrain to siege, so I'm not sure why the enemy keeps coming back to it. Once again, we defeat the Ottoman forces handily. We march south to fight another Ottoman force trying to take our fort in the drylands of Haditha. The enemy is doing a terrible job of concentrating their forces, and we send another Ottoman army packing. At this point, 3 years into the war, we've lost a total of 41,000 troops, while the Ottomans and Russians have lost 135,000. In October, we get a very fortunate event, military reform. This one's a no-brainer. We reform the army, giving us a 20% morale boost for 10 years, as well as mill power and army professionalism. We repel another Ottoman siege at Hasan-Kaifa in January of 1533 with about a 2-to-1 casualty ratio. Almost a year later, in December, we fight off yet another Ottoman stack in the same location. The next action's in the north, at the mountain fort of Kars in September of 1534. This time it's a 43,000-man Russian army who are forced to retreat after a short battle. We head back to Hasan-Kaifa, which is under siege again, but this time by a large joint Russian-Ottoman army. The enemy has reinforcements in adjacent provinces, but for some reason either the Russians or Ottomans send them in, and we win yet another battle. At some point, the Russians manage to get an army through the Arabian desert and siege down the island of Hormuz. I totally missed this. I didn't think the AI would get mill access from multiple countries for this sort of loop around. In any event, it doesn't work out too well for this particular army. We attack them while they're sieging our fort in Bam, and then we use our navy to block the strait so they have nowhere to retreat to and wipe out the rest of the force in Moghastan. We naval barrage and try to retake Hormuz before the Ottoman and Russian armies can take any of our forts to the northwest. We don't get the siege until the 64% tick, but that's still enough time to get our armies marching back to the front lines. By November of 1536, the war's been going on for 7 years, with 80,000 casualties on our side and 301,000 on the enemy side. Russia will take white peace, which we offer. I check to see the ideas the Ottomans have taken: admin, quality, and quantity, which has to be about the sweatiest possible combo. With the Russians out of the war, it's time to finally go on the offensive. We push into Syria, catching a small Ottoman force in the drylands of Urfa. Our legendary ruler Ismail dies mid-war in February of 1537 after a reign of 35 years. The new ruler's pretty average, but he'll have to do. Ottoman forces try to stop our siege at Halab in May, but are beaten back. We move to sieging Erzincan in eastern Anatolia, which the Ottomans try to relieve in September. Now that we're the ones sieging mountain forts, we have the -2 penalty working against us, and although we still win, this is a really bloody battle. 24k lost on our side versus 17k for the Ottomans. We attack an Ottoman army in Urfa in January of 1538 and win another bloody victory. We're up to 133,000 casualties for this war, and we've maxed out ticking war score, so I start looking at peace deals. We end up making peace with the Ottomans in March of 1538 after a 9-year war. We take 9 provinces across Syria and eastern Anatolia, including the last Kurdish provinces we needed. This war should have been harder than it was. We were really bailed out by AI ineptitude more than anything else. Still, an Ottoman-Russian alliance at this stage of the game is pretty gross, and I can't deny it felt good to come out on top. With the war over, we can finally form Persia, and we replace our Ardabili ideas with the new Persian ones. Since we expanded so much before forming Persia, we've already completed a number of missions. We complete Consolidate Persia, which triggers a reforms event that spreads 32 development across our country. Next is Expand the Safavid Order, which gives us Ulama loyalty, and Legacy of the Safavid, which unlocks a cool Tier 4 government reform which of course we'll enact. Butcher the Black Sheep gives us 100 admin power, and Protect the West Iranian gives us permanent claims in the Mashriq region. Since we've already conquered that region, we complete Unite the Mashriq, giving us 2 free cultures and permanent claims in Egypt. Caucasian Conquest gives us permanent claims in Eastern Anatolia and 2 more free culture slots. Unfortunately, I lost part of a session around here due to an OBS crash, but you aren't missing much. We completed a couple missions on the Shia path and worked on the economy a bit, but you didn't miss any wars. Speaking of wars, we're about to start our next one against Transoxiana. Currently they're fully occupied by Russia, but we wait until the Mamluks will dishonor and declare in October of 1544. Russia doesn't make peace until 2 years later in the fall of 1546. They take a huge chunk of the Samarkand trade node and create another border with us. Mid-war, we save up enough money to complete the mission Shah Shah's Coffers, giving us a free stability and a construction and dev cost reduction. We're able to complete Center of Culture, giving our capital some permanent bonuses, as well as Construct Great Buildings, which unlocks the overpowered Great Works of Iran estate privilege. This privilege lets you ignore terrain development penalties, and of course we enact it right away. Next up is Compete with Hormuz, which gives us 11 dev in Moghastan and a permanent bonus to the province. Tailors of Persia gives us some gold and another overpowered estate privilege, Promote Persian Rugs. This privilege gives our cloth, silk, and dyes provinces, which is the majority of the Persia node, a 15% goods produced boost, so this is another automatic enact. Anyways, back to the war. Delhi declares on Transoxiana as well, which messes up a few of our occupations. Delhi makes peace in March of 1549, taking a bunch of Afghani culture provinces. Afghani is in our culture group, so this isn't going to stand. We make peace with Transoxiana a month later, taking the rest of their land in the Khorasan region. In June of 1551, we complete another mission, the Persian Rug. This is kind of an interesting mission because it lets you temporarily manipulate the price of silk, cloth, and dyes for a choice of several bonuses. We choose the first option, giving us mercantilism and spiking the price of silk for 40 years. My goal with this run is to unite the Persian culture group, and there are still 2 cultures we don't have. Afghan land in the north under the control of Delhi, and Baluchi land in the south under the control of Sindh. Both have solid alliance networks, but we go after Sindh first, declaring in December of 1552. The first battle of the war is at sea, and our fleet easily defeats a Gujarati fleet of 5 heavies off the coast of Makran. This is followed by our army attacking a small Delhi stack in the drylands of Siwi, which we win easily. Our army goes on to repel a combined enemy force trying to retake the mountain fort in Ghazni. This fort has ramparts, so we get a +1 bonus in addition to the enemy -2 penalty, resulting in another easy victory. We push pretty aggressively here, taking 2 simultaneous battles in the mountain passes of Jalalabad. The enemy retreats early, and we push forward and barrage the next mountain fort in the province of Roh. By November, we've pushed deep into the Delhi heartland, and we take another 2 simultaneous battles, with the first resulting in a stack wipe. We make peace with Delhi in February of 1555, pillaging their capital and demanding war reparations. With Delhi out, we siege down the rest of Sindh and reach a peace deal in March of 1556. We demand all their Baluchi land, including the key mountain fort in Kalat. This war gave us enough land to complete the mission Secure Khorasan, giving us a bunch of permaclaims in the West India area. In March of 1556, we invite a religious scholar, which lets us complete the mission The Islamic Teachings, giving us some prestige and ulama loyalty. We're also able to complete the mission Convert Persia, giving us an extra 2 tolerance of the true faith for 25 years. Hiring an Inquisitor advisor lets us complete our religious stance, giving us extra missionary strength and tolerance of the true faith. Since we have over 1,000 development in Shia provinces, we can complete Great Shia Empire, giving even more tolerance of the true faith and an extra 20% manpower in true faith provinces. In June of 1556, I happened to look at the Ottomans. It looks like they're finally going to take Constantinople, about 100 years too late for it to matter. In May of 1559, we declare a holy war against Russia, automatically breaking the Russia-Ottoman alliance. As a fellow Muslim nation, the Ottomans won't fight against us in a holy war, even if they're Sunni and we're Shia. This is one of the best parts of the Holy War CB, and I think it goes overlooked sometimes. If you're playing as a Christian nation, you can use the same technique to break up annoying stuff like an Ottoman-French alliance. In November, we complete enough ramparts along our western forts to complete the western fortification, giving us extra defensiveness and manufactory slots. The first battle of the war comes in August of 1560 at our fort in Herat. The Russian force is fairly small and gets stack wiped by our combined armies. A larger Russian force tries to re-siege the fort, but we attack in March and the Russians are forced to retreat. The next battle isn't until January of 1562 when we attack another Russian siege army in Shamaki in the eastern Caucasus. Despite having equivalent tech and morale, the Russian army is smaller and has a terrain and discipline disadvantage. In May, we complete the requirements for the mission Sword of Our Faith, giving us bonuses for being Defender of the Faith. I don't think there are many Shia nations left, but we complete the mission and declare ourselves Defender of the Faith anyways. Our next battle is back to the Eastern Front, and again at the fort in Herat. Unfortunately, the Russians get the siege right before we arrive, and we end up taking a river crossing penalty. We win, but this was really close and bloody. In August of 1564, we catch a Russian army in the desert of Ashabad, resulting in another victory. We fight yet another battle in Herat, but this one's a much easier win. We follow that battle by attacking an adjacent Russian army in Maymana. We fight another series of battles in May of 1565, again in the plains of Khorasan. I don't know what the AI is doing with these stacks all standing around not helping each other. We defeat the first army and then move on to relieve the siege in Bajnord. Denmark sends us a white peace offer in July of 1566, which we accept. In August, we get a strange notification. The Ottomans have made peace with Tunis, giving 4 Tunisian provinces to Aragon. I scroll over to Europe. What's going on in Iberia and North Africa? Portugal took provinces from Castile? What a mess. We fight another battle in January, barely getting to an occupied Russian fort in Quiche before it falls. We end up reaching a peace deal with Russia in March of 1567 after an 8-year war with significant casualties on both sides. We take a chunk of the Samarkand node as well as the last 2 Georgian provinces on the Black Sea. The ink is barely dry on the Russian peace treaty when we declare our third and final war against Transoxiana. This one's non-competitive, so I'll skip to the peace deal, just the province of Samarkand. Next up is a much more significant target, Delhi, with what seems like half of India allied to them. We declare in January of 1568, and we start the war with a total army strength of 75,000. The Delhi Alliance bloc, on the other hand, has a strength of 237,000. In June, we get a notification that the Ottoman-Russian alliance is back on, which is annoying but not totally unexpected. AI nations will often forgive each other for breaking alliances and re-ally later. We're able to siege down a couple border forts before the enemy was able to get their armies together, so the first battle doesn't come until February of 1569 in the farmlands of Lahore. We stack wipe a Gujarati army while a Bengali army walks by. If you're wondering why you see AQ forces fighting with us, we were able to invite them into our cultural sphere and vassalize them. The next battle's in November of 1569 in the drylands of Balkh. This Gujarati army is totally outmatched and gets stack wiped almost immediately. A stack of Bengali artillery marches into us and gets wiped out. We head north to defend another fort and get our third back-to-back stack wipe. These Indian armies are behind in mil tech, morale, and discipline, and the results are brutal. The next stage of this war is a little strange. We retake the mountain fort and row, but then there's a standoff with neither side wanting to attack. We have ticking war score, and time's on our side, so we're happy to wait this out. The standoff lasts over 4 years, from June of 1570 to July of 1574, when we're able to start white piecing Delhi's allies, starting with Bengal and followed in August by Gujarat. With 2 of their stronger allies out, this war is basically over and we push into Delhi's core. We reach a peace deal in October of 1574, grabbing all of Delhi's Afghani provinces and completing our goal of unifying the Persian culture group. We start annexing AQ in October of 1575, and we get the province of Rabah from the Mamluks shortly afterwards by threatening war. We've accomplished what I wanted to with this run. We're the #1 great power, we united our culture group, and we completed most of the Persian mission tree. But I figured ending it here would be a little anticlimactic, plus I wanted to show off our army quality. What better way to do that than by declaring war on the Ottomans, whose diplomacy has gotten even more gross, allied to France, Aragon, and Russia. At the start of the war, we're outnumbered more than 4 to 1 with a total enemy strength of 428,000 against our 102,000. We start the war by rushing to siege down Hormuz and knocking them out as soon as possible, which we do in August of 1578, just 3 months into the war. The first battle comes in November when we attack an Ottoman army sieging our new border fort in Odishi. We have a huge advantage in morale and discipline, and we open the war with a stack wipe. The toughest thing about this war isn't going to be the battles, it's going to be defending the huge front we have with Russia. It takes several months for our troops to march across Persia, and this is going to turn into a sort of whack-a-mole, at least until we can white peace Russia. We manage to get to the fort in Bukhara just days before it falls, and we destroy the entire 39,000 strong Russian army. Following religious, we've gone into quality ideas. Again, this is more for fun and roleplay. If we want to expand, we'd probably go for admin. We march west and attack an Ottoman army sieging our fort in Haditha. The quality difference is so high that these battles are ending before the enemy can even retreat, and we get our third back-to-back stack wipe. We face off against Aragon for the first time, who are trying to take the old Crusader citadel in Aleppo. Unfortunately for them, their army quality isn't any better than the Russians or Ottomans, and we get another stack wipe. The next battle we take is about as disadvantageous as it gets. While trying to retake our fort in Erzincan, we get attacked by a massive combined force of 185,000 Ottoman and French troops. Since we're the sieging army, this time the -2 mountain penalty is against us. The French troops are the best we've faced so far, but they're still no match for our Qizilbash with 129% discipline, and the enemy ends up retreating. The next battle comes in May of 1581 against the Ottomans trying once again to take our citadel in Aleppo. This one isn't a stack wipe, but we do exact a 4-to-1 casualty ratio. We head east to Haditha, where a huge 110,000 Ottoman stack is trying to take another border fort. This is another example of strange AI behavior. This stack is way too big for this era and it has way too many cannons. We get another victory with around a 2-to-1 casualty ratio. While we were busy in the west, Russian and French forces took several forts in the east. Our army isn't big enough to fight on both fronts at once, so we have to ping-pong back and forth. The next battle is the defense of the fort in Ghazni against a French army in January of 1582, resulting in a stack wipe. We head west again, taking on a Russian army in Odishi in August. 4 years into the war, I checked the total casualty counts. We've lost 129,000 troops, while the enemy coalition has lost 508,000. We're up to 46% war score despite never taking a single enemy province. We defend Odishi again, this time against a French army of 47,000, which we stack wipe. We head back to Aleppo and fight off another Ottoman army. I'm losing track of how many times we've defended Odishi, but in May the Russians are back for another stack wipe. In July it's back to Haditha, where we defeat another numerically superior Ottoman force. In February of 1584, we stack wipe an Aragonese army trying to siege Aleppo, then we have to march east again, where we face a Russian army in the desert of Sarax. This is immediately followed by a stack wipe of a small French force sieging our fort in Gurion. In December, we get the first white peace offer from France, which we accept. France lost a total of 165,000 troops in this war. Aragon offers white peace in April, which we also accept. Aragon lost a total of 91,000 troops. By July, Russia is also ready for white peace. Their total casualty count was 223,000. With the majors out, this is basically a 1v1 and the Ottomans have no chance. We start pushing into Syria and Palestine, taking the Ottoman fort in Sham in December of 1585. We then stack wipe a small Ottoman army that had gotten trapped. The Ottomans are slow learners and have come back to siege Odishi yet again, which of course we push back. We're now up to 71% war score while holding just one Ottoman fort. We white peace the final Ottoman ally in April of 1586, the small East African state of Funj. Somehow the Ottomans are still trying to attack, and we stack wipe yet another army in Aleppo. We start pushing into Anatolia, capturing and sacking the province of Karaman in July. The Ottomans are back in Odishi with a ridiculous army composition: 8,000 infantry, 7,000 cavalry, and 40,000 artillery. After 8 years, I think we're finally ready to call this war. The total casualties were 269,000 on our side and 934,000 for the Ottoman side. We take 10 provinces in Anatolia, which is enough to complete our final mission for this run, Seljuk Successors. I think that's a good place to wrap this one up. I know some people like to see these campaigns go all the way to 1821, but my favorite part of the campaign is always the early game, where there's still challenge and risk. At this stage of the game, honestly a while ago, we're basically unstoppable, as that last war showed. Let's do a quick overview of our nation and see how we stack up with the rest of the world. Let's start with Dev. We are by far the world's #1 great power with a total development of almost 2,000. Here's a look at the culture map mode. You can see we are able to unite all of the Persian group as well as the Georgian, Armenian, and Mashriki cultures as well. Here's the religious map mode. By the end of the game, our whole nation is Shia with the exception of the provinces we just took from the Ottomans. We end with a missionary strength of 16.3%, which is pretty wild. Here's how far we got with ideas: offensive, trade, religious, and quality. I'm happy with these and I think they fit this kind of roleplay playthrough very well. Here's a look at our economy, which is quite strong. Persia is one of my favorite trade nodes, and this is why. You can create a really powerful trade and production-based economy here. Most of our expenses are actually going to an expensive slate of rank 5 advisors. Let's look at our military and holy orders. Our morale is at 6.3 and discipline is at 120%. We ended the game with a Qizilbash limit of 71 out of a total force limit of 219. Pretty much every province ended the game with a holy order, which is part of how we have 403,000 manpower. This was a fun run. Ardabil has a lot of cool flavor stuff: the holy orders, unique government reform, mission tree, Qizilbash, and so on. This combined with a challenging early game makes them one of my favorite nations. I've played Ardabil before, but this was my first attempt at doing so with no allies and only Qizilbash, so that was a fun challenge. Anyways, that about wraps this one up. I have a bunch of ideas for more EU4 challenges that I want to do, and I plan to cover EU5 as well when that launches, so if you enjoy this sort of content, feel free to like and subscribe. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.